Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So thanks for having me. This is not strictly about work, but I guess given it's a book about artificial intelligence and I used generative AI tools to help me write it, it's a good opportunity to talk about the process, and there might be some learnings that everyone can apply to either their creative pursuits or even within a work context. So this is about a book that I released about 5 days ago called Hello World. A brief synopsis of the plot. It's set in the near future, and all research and development in artificial intelligence has been banned. This research takes place in these quantum sandboxes, which are cut off from the outside world. And there is one last sandbox, which is hidden in Tokyo. And the underground organization which is running it recruits one of the scientists who was campaigning against shutting down AI research to come and help them realize superintelligence. And it's a race between the government and underground organizations, and it explores what it means to be human and what artificial intelligence is and how do we interact with it. So very sort of current topic. And yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background into just my writing, and then just talk in a bit more detail about how I use tools to help me with the process. So before I go into it, just a favor to ask. Being an independent author, you have to flog your own book, which can be quite challenging sometimes. So I'm running a free promotion on Amazon at the moment. So if you do have an Amazon account, it would be awesome if you could click the link. I shared the links in the chat, and just download it. That will help with boostings in Amazon, and you know, it's all about trying to get your book featured up the sort of lists of you know, top books. So if anyone listening could do that, that would be really helpful and amazing. So thanks in advance if you do that. So starting at the beginning, I've called chapter 1 Angry Birds, because I'd say that's how my first writing endeavor started. I was playing Angry Birds on my phone a lot, traveling to and from London, and I thought, I'm spending so much time just firing objects at intricate structures. What could I do with my time that was more productive? And I've always wanted to write a novel. So I thought, I'm going to write a novel with all of this time that I'm using on my commute. So I had an idea in 2011 about an organization that monitors social networking activity, and then any anomalies are reported to the government. So a sort of Big Brother style book about social networking and artificial intelligence. That was the seed of the idea, which I then began to write, and then published The Singularity in 2013. And that book did quite well. It got to, I think, number 4 in the sci-fi charts for a brief period. So that was my first writing endeavor, and I've continued since then as a sort of side project outside of work. Nothing to do with AI, but writing, as I've learned, is best captured by the Ernest Hemingway quote, which is simple. Writing is simple. All you have to do is sit down and start typing until you bleed. I'd say that quote best encapsulates what's required to write and finish a book. You just have to plow on through, and it's a real sort of marathon to get to the end. But with enough blood, sweat, and tears, you can get there if that's what you want to do. Since The Singularity, I've written 2 more. I wrote Sleepwalking, which is a psychological thriller, and Snowing in Johannesburg. I'm from South Africa. I grew up in Johannesburg, and this is a time travel book where someone is sent back to Johannesburg, 1985, to stop the future assassin of Nelson Mandela. So those are 2 books I've written, which brings me up to the present day, which is Hello World. And I've called this The Rise of the Machines because it's about artificial intelligence, and that was a big motivator behind writing and finishing the book. I did start it in about I came up with the idea in 2020 or 2021, and I made a start on it and put some post-its up and fleshed out the plot, and then it just sort of that idea gathered dust on the shelf while life got in the way. And then if we fast forward to the beginning of this year, when there was this massive boom in generative artificial intelligence and all of these stories about everyone freaking out about, you know, what artificial intelligence is going to mean for everyone, and all of the stuff from Elon Musk and the different commentators out there, I thought reality is racing ahead of my idea. So that was a motivation, a bit of a kick in the bottom to finish the book and maybe capitalize on some of the sort of hype around AI at the time. So I picked it up again in I think May this year and started writing it, and worked really hard and managed to get it published about five days ago. So bringing it back to the topic, what does it have to do with generative artificial intelligence? Broadly, I would say generative artificial intelligence tools have been incredibly helpful in writing the book, and probably accelerated my timescale quite dramatically, and hopefully added a bit more, like allowed me to build a product or create a product in a short amount of time and at a high level of quality, which is kind of what we try to do in our work at CI&T in terms of digital solutions. So when you write, there are a number of things you have to do. You have to write prose, you've got to do a lot of research, editing, idea validation, proofreading, idea generation, assessment, visualization, copy editing, translating, marketing, video production. There's a whole suite of activities that you have to do. And as an independent writer, you generally have to do most of these yourself, or rope in friends or family to help you along, which I did. And I had some good support from a couple of friends in terms of the whole editorial process. However, given I was writing this at a time when there was a boom in these tools, I decided to use these tools to help me in all of these different areas. So the main tools that I used was ChatGPT, and Midjourney and Grammarly. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes, behind some of the prompts and sort of support I use these tools for. To give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes of the writing process. So I'm going to start with ChatGPT. ChatGPT, I'd say, was mostly useful as a research assistant. It's not great at writing prose, I have to say. So if you ask it to write some creative prose, it's quite contrived and cliched, and it's not really, it doesn't really write in your style. So but there are a number of different uses where that it was incredibly helpful as, in this case, a research assistant. So here's an example where there's two characters and they're riding in a pedalo, which is a boat that you pedal with your feet, and they have to escape a shooter on the banks. And I was thinking, how do they get out of this situation? Do they flip the pedalo over? I have no idea. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT, is it possible to flip a pedalo in the middle of a lake? And ChatGPT came back with some instructions. So sort of validating some ideas there. And then it's quite good at specifics. So like little details, like how deep is the Camden Regents Park boating lake? Can you stand in it? Is it up to your ankles, knees, whatever? So it was really good at just finding quick facts along the way and fact checking as I went. And also there was, flights and travel, and you have to really be careful to make sure that your time, the time narrative makes sense. So I used it quite a lot to help me work out, like, if people are traveling on private jets from London to Tokyo. What's the time going to be at the source? What's the time going to be at the destination? There are obviously other tools out there to do it, but because I was using ChatGPT, it just became like a tool that I would go to rather than searching Google. And also like little details where I've never really seen something happen. So I need to be able to describe it. Like if I shoot a window of a car, how does it shatter and how do I explain that? So it's just got this wealth of knowledge about these little details, which are really helpful to sort of add richness of detail in the writing. And it's about humanity and exploring the sort of dark recesses of what makes us human. So I enjoy philosophy, so I used it to help me out a lot with understanding the research behind like great philosophers and like Jung, and looking at the Jungian shadow self and all different kind of theoretical bases around what makes us human. So I might have got sort of quite sidetracked into researching and understanding that, but ChatGPT was a really great teacher in that regard. And then for little things like, finding different ways of saying something so you avoid repetition, and finding synonyms. Again, you could use Word for that, but I was just finding I was just using ChatGPT as a sort of constant tool. And as a creative co-pilot, it's really good. So if you want to come up with a name, or let's say your characters are in a situation that they need to get out of, and you kind of think, well, how might they get out of this? You can get ChatGPT to come up with some ideas if you give them the sort of situation that they're in, and that can and you can have a little bit of back and forth coming up with a sort of plausible sort of storyline in terms of getting characters out of difficult predicaments. And as an editor, it's also good. I did try it with spelling and grammar, but I found Grammarly was a lot better for that. We all have Grammarly as part of at CINT, and that was a much better tool. So I kind of stopped using it as a grammar editor. I did try it as more of a sort of structural editor to say, here's a chapter, tell me how to improve it or where the sort of weak areas are, and give me some cues. And it was actually quite good. It came up with some good steers, like places where you are telling, not showing, and or where you might want to like dial up a little bit of drama or excitement or foreshadowing. So it has a good understanding of like what are the sort of narrative tricks that you can use as an author to heighten the the intrigue and interest in whatever you're writing. So there were some good sort of steers and cues that I got from it, but I found as I sort of got towards the end, I kind of just had those baked in my head and I was applying them anyway. And then this is something I'm experiencing. I'd love to be able to publish the book in Polish and Portuguese, and I was doing some experimenting with ChatGPT, but although this is where it went really strange and started hallucinating and writing its own version of my continuing chapters, and so it's definitely not ready for translation, and it came up with some very odd extensions of my storyline. And now I'm in the marketing phase, so I'm seeing if it can write some sort of marketing blurbs or Facebook adverts, and sort of seeing how it can create a bit more sort of punchy marketing artifacts that I can push out into social media. And also looking at it for keyword research. So keywords are really important when you create adverts. So seeing if ChatGPT can help like do keyword research for me, so I can get the best results from my campaign. And also as a prompt engineer, I used it as a prompt engineer to like for the visualization side of the book, of the book, which is like mixed results on that front. But in a nutshell, a very broad set of like use cases that ChatGPT was really good at, was a great help as I wrote the book. Moving on to the visualization side of things, I used Midjourney. I kind of stopped using DALL-E or Stable Diffusion. I just stuck with Midjourney because I felt like it had really like the best quality images. And there are a number of different like things that I wanted to do with imagery. First of all, I wanted to design a cover, and I wanted to have this abstract cyber pattern in the background, and Midjourney produced these pretty amazing results where you can just sort of feed it some cues around like city backgrounds, and yeah, so I made hundreds of these backgrounds and settled on the one that is currently in the cover. Then I also wanted to do some visual exploration of the characters, not only for my own benefit, but for marketing benefits. So I could like put these images out there, and people could start getting a sort of aesthetic, a visual identity around the book, which would maybe help drive interest and you know, potential downloads of the book later on. So I often have like, I had movie characters in the back of my mind writing these books. I'm a fan of Strange Days and Ralph Fiennes, and one of the characters, the detective, kind of had this loose association with them. So I played around with using reference images in Midjourney and creating representations of the character. I felt that they were different enough, so I wouldn't be sued in terms of ripping off like celebrity identity. But you know, I guess now we're sort of heading into the gray area of generative art and copyright and so on. But I don't know, I made a judgment call that I was far enough away from the real characters to be safe. I'm a fan of Lex Friedman. He does a lot of like talks about AI, and I had sort of him in the back of my mind. So he sort of was a little bit of an inspiration behind The Scientist. So I sort of experimented with creating like different versions of him. And for some reason I chose Miley Cyrus, just the first name that popped into my head. My daughter would say it's because I'm a boomer, but anyway, she's sort of quite sort of defiant and rebellious. I guess that's maybe why, and came up with different visualizations for her. And then one of the baddies, I don't know if anyone would be able to guess who this is. It's a bit of a celebrity in the sort of YouTube commentary world, named Jordan Peterson. And he is a baddie in the story. I won't go into details around that, but yeah. So I came up with all of these different artifacts for characters, which were assets that I could use in pre-marketing. And then I also tried to do with environments in the book. So there's lots of different settings in the book. So I tried to like create a visualization of what that environment might look like in Tokyo, or in virtual reality, or in London, and then use those again to just kind of portray a visual identity of the book on social media. And then I also tried technology, which I found much harder, because it's really hard to do specificity with image generators. It's very good at like broad brush strokes, I'd say, and having creative license. But if you have a really specific idea, it's actually super hard to get that like rendered. So like production designers, I think, would have a difficult time with image generators. So lots of playing around with reference images and mixing in things together and whatnot. But I came up with a few sort of renders of some of the technology components in the story. And so these all sort of culminated in a video, which I made with my son. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. I can try play it. But I also used a artificial intelligence tool called DID to do like to animate a still image. So let me see if I can play it. Raphael, give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. I'm not sure if you will be able to, but let me try.
No, we're not hearing. Not yet.
Yeah. Anyway, there's moody background music. I might just share the video afterwards if you want to see it, but I'll wait until the character starts speaking, just to show you how I turned a still into a speaking character. So that was a little bit of fun. So I'll share the video afterwards. If you're interested, you can have a look. But yeah, like all of these tools, there's so many tools out there where you can create like the video side of things is really interesting to explore. And I'm also using it to, like, on Instagram, do these weird sci-fi morphs. If you take like really strange photographers and you get them to render like blend them in with science fiction, you just get some super interesting results. Got nothing to do with the book, but it's just about like creating interesting imagery and then using that to drive people to your Instagram page and then market your book from that point on. So yeah, continuing to use kind of Midjourney in that respect. And yeah. So finally, what happens next? It's obviously continuing to explore how to use these tools, and in whatever the next endeavor is. The next endeavor is some more advertising, doing some more stuff on social media. Someone at LinkedIn contacted me and they want to do like a radio play of one chapter and using generative AI to like sort of visualize that. So that's like an interesting thing that just popped into my inbox. So there'll be like, that will be produced. And then, you know, if there's enough interest in the book, I might write a follow-up Goodbye World, or I don't know what it will be. So lots more sort of things to explore using these tools as part of the process. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I hope you found it interesting, and yeah, happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks, Mark. And we're open to questions, comments, or anything like that. Anyone here?
Hi, Mark, it's Simon here. I missed the first bit of the presentation, apologies, but it was very interesting. Did you, two questions actually, did you include ChatGPT in your acknowledgements or credits of the book? And how much was the total cost of like doing all the lookups and Midjourney and creating the images and everything?
I did not I actually did reference in the foreword. I said of the book, I wrote about how generative AI tools have been incredibly helpful and that my writing process will never be the same again. So it's sort of acknowledged in the foreword. In terms of cost, it's like, I don't know, $10 a month. So over 4 months, $40 for the visualizations, and whatever the like ChatGPT cost is like $20 a month. So yeah, like, I don't know, about $100-ish for ChatGPT and Midjourney. And yeah, I've obviously used real people to help me, which probably cost the most in terms of like paying a friend to help me edit the book, and roping in some other friends and family to help me along.
Sure. Great, thanks.
Cool.
Oh, quick question, Mark. Been following you on Instagram. I've been seeing these some of the marketing around this because I've been intrigued as to what the book's all about. So thank you for sharing this. I wanted to ask, so since you've launched only 5 days ago, obviously the book has taken you know 2-3 months to write, but because the technology is advancing and it's changing constantly, do you feel that there's changes already that you wish you could have now put in the book now? Maybe there's probably bigger changes to come, but because we're still very close to launch. Well, your launch date was only a few days ago.
Yeah, if you mean in terms of like technology advancements within the book, it's probably that there will be things currently which are more advanced in my book than they are today. I think I was more interested in like the exploration from a more of like an existential point of view, or like a from a human point of view, in terms of how do we relate to machines and what does it mean for us, and so the technology is just a vehicle for telling that story. So I think, yeah, I'm not too worried about even more advanced technologies coming in and making my book a little bit look a little bit sort of old school from a tech perspective.
No.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, you'll have to write another book then thereafter anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
As a follow-up. Thank you.
Mark,
Cool.
in the chat, Ellie asked, have you thought about training ChatGPT on your previous book content? I wonder to bias future prose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe after I've written enough books and they sort of meet the minimum criteria to do fine tuning or training, like from a sort of base level, could be an interesting experience. I don't, just generally from a generative AI point of view, I think that's the area that's going to be very interesting to explore at CINT, is like training these models with custom information. I wanted to create, like, I'd love to create one just with like the works of William Gibson or you know, a specific author, and just see what happens there. I don't think I've written enough to like be able to meaningfully impact a language model or something like that.
We have another one from Priya here. For the imagery generated by Midjourney, was there any copyright issues that you had to consider when using the images for the cover and marketing?
Short answer is no. You are allowed to use images for commercial purposes. So yeah, there's no. I didn't have to think about that.
Anyone else? Mark, I have one here. If you taking a look at the technology you expand in your book, or the context and relating to what we have today, what do you think it's more fictional? I mean, more, I don't know, more not so close to us nowadays. I think for me, I read half of the book, so I don't have all the book in my head, but until now, I think that the shutdown itself seems to be the most fictional thing in your book. I mean, I don't see it coming
Yeah, it was interesting. There was,
what do you think?
Yeah, because the whole hiatus, the call for the hiatus against the development of artificial intelligence happened in the real world whilst I was writing this book, and you realize how impossible a thing like that would be to achieve. So yeah, I can kind of understand your thinking along those lines, and I guess the way I tried to address that was like this idea of having these like quantum data centers, which were the sort of key to having the sort of computational power to like achieve super intelligence. So it had a sort of physical constraint that would be much easier to legislate against, rather than what we have today, which is, you know, servers running all over the world that could potentially, you know, crack the problem. So yeah, I think being able to legislate and enforce that shutdown is probably an impossible ask, and in today's current environment. But for sort of fictional purposes, I dealt with that through like having to need these big physical data centers to do it. And then I guess the quantum stuff is probably a bit more in the future. So the jury's still out on like how effective quantum computing is going to be for like machine learning use cases. So training and developing these machine learning models, like how how could like quantum computing really help? So it's a little bit fuzzy there on what the impact's going to be. Does that answer your question, Rafael?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mark.
I just see something from Kit. Did you consider using something like character.ai to have conversations? I didn't actually. It's a really good idea. So yeah, there's probably a whole bunch of tools that I could have used and will try out in future endeavors. And dialogue super important. So could really good idea there, Kit, and something to try out in the future.
Nice. I just have I didn't use very much character.ai, but I think they do not use ChatGPT. They have their own trained model, right? Does anybody here have more information about that? But I think they don't use ChatGPT. And it's interesting because for my perspective, it's a very good tool. I think it works. Does anybody here knows something about that?
I'm not sure myself.
No, okay. Anybody else? People, you can just turn on your mics or send some messages here at the chat.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think that's it, Mark. Thank you so much for bringing. Yeah, people are thanking you. There's a question. Okay. My question is if this experience completed you to write more, compelled you to write more.
Yeah, I'd say definitely. I think writing is a bit like therapy for me. So it's like a mental escape. I need it to just as part of my kind of day to day. And I think it also helps with thinking laterally and creative problem solving and developing your own critical thinking ability. And I also did a lot of research in terms of AI specifically for this book and psychology. So I felt a very enriching process. Recommend anyone to do the same. And for me, I was definitely compelled to write more.
So, okay, Mark, thank you very much for bringing your experience and your work. It's very nice to see how we can use it in different contexts, but not so different at all at the end, because it's a way to use it, bring the creativity and boost our creativity using these tools in a lot of contexts. So thank you very, very much